We're going to get started. I'll go ahead and call this Monday, May 4th, 2026 of the Whitefish City Council to order. We have folks joining us online, I believe, but thanks very much for attending in person. And we will start first by indicating that Councilors Norton and Sweeney are both excused this evening. With that said, we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and I would ask Ben's father, Bill Davis, to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks very much, Bill. We will move on to communications from the public. We do have 2 public hearings advertised this evening, so if you're here to speak to those individual hearings, please wait until those items are called. Otherwise, anything to bring to the attention of the council, now would be your opportunity. Name and address, please, when you approach the podium. Any public comment this evening? Z.
Hello, everyone. Z 418 East 2nd Street. First of all, I would be remiss, since I do have this opportunity. I just wanted to give a shout out to 3 of our awesome local businesses, Cutthroat Bagel Company, Sage and Cedar, and Bookworks, for once again being on the correct side of history. Thank you for your solidarity in closing your businesses on May 1st. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, for my comment. Oh, excuse me. I need my prop. Thank you for your indulgence. The Police Commission is a quasi-judicial, cheers, body established under Montana Code 7-32-4151 through 4164 and City Code 2-5, ideally acting as a check on the operations of the Whitefish Police Department. Unfortunately, beyond participating in the hiring process, their oversight has been negligible. In light of the $90,000 settlement that the city will pay to Becair El Rengifo del Castillo, the victim of racial profiling by Officer Michael Hingis, it would behoove you to implement the following changes to the duties of the Police Commission. Require the Police Commission to conduct quarterly reviews of policies and procedures, and per 7-32-4158, such meetings must be open to the public. Our beautiful city parks and trees have received more attention and advocacy than public safety. A key component of community policing is building long-term relationships through engagement and partnership. Let's move forward in that spirit together. Thank you.
Thank you, Z. Richard.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Richard Hillner, 104 5th Street, here in Whitefish. And a couple of things. Craig, you may not have seen my text earlier, but in you can answer it sometime later. I had an interesting opportunity last Wednesday crossing the footbridge to next to Birch Point, where that lift station is, and two of our public employees, our public works employees, were busy dropping a huge hook to fish out somebody's underwear from the lift station, and it was an unpleasant job, I can assure you. And I want to shout out to our public works employees and all of our city employees, but especially those two who were working that morning. Everyone who works for this city does an amazing job and deserve all of our appreciation and thanks. And given that you're also now discussing the transportation issue of motorized vehicles on our trails and streets and one thing and another, I couldn't help but notice this week in the that's a Newsweek type magazine, Innovation of the Week, and it starts out, imagine the Cybertruck but done well, about a tenth the size, and that's the 3,495 Olito, which is an, sorry, I'm just using scraps of paper to hand this out so I didn't waste too much paper or printing. This is an amazing little machine. It goes 40 miles an hour. It can't pop a wheelie, I don't think, but it has enough room for two people, and it weighs 175 pounds, and I think it's the next thing we're going to have to deal with on our bike pedestrian paths. Heads up.
Thanks, Richard. Further public comments this evening? Any volunteer board reports from the audience? Riss and Daniel.
Hi, my name is Riss Getz. I'm Executive Director of Whitefish Housing Authority. In the packet today, you should have had a proposal from Daniel and I regarding administration of the Legacy Homes Program rental portion of it. I remember when I first came back to Whitefish and was working in housing here, people were really concerned that our inclusionary zoning program that you guys had worked so hard on for so long was essentially totally neutralized by the actions that the state took by removing that as a housing tool. Years later, it's pretty exciting that we have so many new units coming online this year. We've onboarded 8 already as kind of a little trial run, and we have 65 more coming on later this year. Rentals that we want to onboard, we want to make sure that we're getting our workforce into. From my experience of getting these last 8 on top of the other 11 that we've managed, it is a lot of work to recruit the right people at the right incomes to these units to make sure that we are essentially doing the right case management and providing the right type of service to manage a program that we offer to developers and to our community. Daniel and I work together all the time. We're always talking about strategy, about administration. Our organizations were always intended to work together. And for that reason, we are proposing that the Housing Authority contract with Housing Whitefish to administer the rental portion of the workforce program. Probably one of the biggest reasons why this is because Housing Whitefish over the past few years, while I've been doing some cleanup, they've been working really, really hard on outreach to our workforce in Whitefish, to people who need those types of services, and they've kicked off and expanded a really successful program, the Whitefish, or the Workforce Rental Assistance Program, or WRAP. Daniel and I and our boards have seen this as an opportunity to create a position that would manage all of the workforce administration in Whitefish and be able to really make sure that we're taking care of our people who need rental assistance or who want to be long-term in a more affordable unit. We feel like it's a great opportunity to do so. So this report and the little request is that because of all the labor that it takes to establish a successful program with 65 units coming online and even more scheduled to come on next year, we're requesting a one-time ask of $30,000 to essentially front load for this position. And Daniel can talk a little bit more about how that position might work. But essentially, to ensure the success of city programs, that we have the right person administering it, that Daniel and I, who have a lot of other duties, aren't having to run these programs ourselves. We're really excited to make a city program work really well as we scale it up. Thank you.
Thanks, Riss. Daniel.
Just tack on a little bit on what Riss is saying. Really for us, being able to team these two programs and have them work together, we have served over right about 120 households, right in that sweet spot for this Legacy Homes program. So our goal is really to help transition some of those folks that are cost burdened and in the rental assistance program, and really try to help them get into some of these deed restricted units that are going to be a better long-term option for them. So really, as Riss said, this is kind of just the next stage for us where it's not a big major transition. It's doing what we're already doing with income verification, a lot of communication with the landlords, and really this ask is to help us. As I put in here, we're going to have with the administrative fee probably $37,000 to $40,000 once all these units are up and running. But in order to get there and to make sure it's a successful onboarding of this city program, we want to make sure that we can have the right people in place. So yeah, this is Housing Whitefish will match those funds 1-to-1, so we can bring somebody on, and they'll be the workforce kind of housing coordinator or something along those lines. So we're happy to answer any questions that you have, but that's our ask tonight for you guys.
Thanks, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel or Riss? Not seeing any. Dana, would you like a motion from the council, or should we consider this at the end of the meeting?
You could act right now. It was in the packet with the request. I will tell you that you received today the proposed fiscal year 2027 budget, and you do have available funds. I would recommend that these funds come out of our affordable housing fund and not resort tax.
And is that budgeted in FY27, or can it be?
Yeah, we budgeted the full amount available, but there's about $120,000 that we don't have specific projects identified for, so this would be one of those that you would utilize the $120,000 for.
Thank you, Dana. Steve?
Just a question, would that be an ongoing match year after year? Or is this something you would eventually take over out of your program?
Yeah, we anticipate that once this is up and running, there's the 3% admin fee that the Housing Authority currently receives, but Housing Whitefish will then take that over. So that's going to be probably about, again, close to about $40,000 once all these units are up and running. And then Housing Whitefish will be able to fundraise and utilize our funds for the remainder. So we really do see this as,
Seed money,
yeah,
essentially.
Seed money, getting this started, just so that we can get this person onboarded, help the program really.
Okay, just want to make
be
sure
successful.
it's,
Yep.
this is something we'd have to budget for year after year.
We're seeing this right now as a one-time. If the program, we see a whole bunch more legacy units coming down, and there's changes to the program, certainly worth that in the future. But right now, we're intending just the one-time. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion, or did you have a question, Giuseppe? Please. Yep.
So Daniel, your organization has tapped very effectively into the affordable housing fund that the city has put aside. If the council approves this, in a way, it's your organization taking away that money from programs to pay for this position. Because if we do that, it looks like we are going down to the path of using the funds from the affordable housing fund. Just once. And are you comfortable with this?
So we do have the agreement with the city for the funds, and I believe those are already budgeted for the next 2 fiscal years. I mean, for me personally, I'm doing it all at Housing Whitefish and overseeing the rental assistance program and the legacy, or, you know, all of this. And so I think really for bringing this position on, I really see it as benefiting the rental assistance program, which the city's very generously been funding, help us to grow and expand that, and really just have that central point of if you're looking for a rental in Whitefish and you're working in the community, you can just have a one-stop shop. I think it really simplifies. And so, Giuseppe, I think for me, I think it'll really help to simplify, and it will really help us at Housing Whitefish to take that next step and really getting out in the community more. I think we've done a really good job getting it out there. We've had a lot of people in the program, but having an additional staff member that can really be out there talking about both these programs will be really beneficial.
If I might add something to that, it's exciting that there is something built in there that this is sort of a one-time thing, right? That it will be able to pay for itself moving forward. And if you think about the time that we're paying for, that's time that both Daniel and I will be able to get back, and that we'll be able to work at getting more resources, not from the city, at maybe applying for federal grants, and really expanding the work that we are doing by having this position set aside. So I think it's actually really high impact when you think of staff hours and how we're allocating that. So I would say sometimes it's hard to be like, oh, we're helping pay for a position, but actually this position I really believe will be, and making sure that we can get them onboarded and getting people and like the program set up and recruiting people ahead of time with so many units coming online at the same time. I would just say it might seem like a bit of a strange request, or we'd rather be paying for programs, but this, again, one-time ask will have a really high impact on the success of programs moving forward.
Okay.
Thank you,
You
Russ.
ready for a motion?
Ben had a question? Oh, I was making a motion. Yep, Giuseppe?
Well, I move to approve the request as presented for funds taken from the affordable housing funding for budget of 26-27, correct? Fiscal year 27, for one time, as requested by Whitefish Housing Authority and Housing Whitefish.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Davis. Further discussion?
Oh, wait, could I just clarify one thing before you vote?
Dana?
When do you guys need the money? Because it might not be fiscal year 27. Okay, in June. Okay, we do have funding still available in that fund, I will tell you that. We have a little bit over $40,000 to finish off through June 30th of this year, which is fiscal year 26. So, thank you. Just wanna
So
clarify.
I have a question then. Are these funds coming out of the budget fiscal year that is ending June 30th, or?
That actually, I think, is what they're requested.
Thank you for helping, Dana. So I will amend my motion, the funds to be coming out of the available funds, they're available for the affordable housing programs, fiscal year 26.
Thank you, Giuseppe. All those in favor of the motion, please. Did you have a question, Ben, or a comment? Please.
I just want to say this is a good problem to have. You know, the Legacy Homes program took years to draft. It was a complicated policy solution that this council and many others have worked on for a long time. And here we are finally seeing the results of that with several dozen affordable housing units coming online this year. That's a big deal. And I think that may be the hard part, but we don't want to fall down at the end in the administration of it. And I think it's really important for the city and for our partners that that we're ahead of the game on managing these units well, so that the program is a success now that we're in this critical time. So I'm glad you're here asking, and I'm glad you've thought this through. And please, I appreciate your focus going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Daniel, Riss, thanks very much. Appreciate it. I'll turn it back to the council. Any volunteer board reports from City Council? Not seeing any. You do have the consent agenda containing the April 20th special as well as regular meeting minutes. Can I have a motion, please? Steve?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
And Ben, you will be recusing?
Yes, I will be recusing from this vote. Thank you.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously with Councillor Davis recusing himself from the vote. That will bring us to our first of two public hearings, our first being item 6A, consideration of a request from the Whitefish Assembly of God for a conditional use permit to expand their church to add a multi-purpose building for youth teen activities located at 150 Lamb Lane, and the property is zoned WA, which is our agricultural district. Dave?
Yeah, good evening. So this is a conditional use permit request. Churches currently in most of our zones require a conditional use permit to be constructed and or to expand. And so the Whitefish Assembly of God, they're asking to be able to add a second building on their site, which would be a single-story multi-purpose room and 4 classrooms for youth and teen activities for the church, as well as some expanded parking around there with an additional 26 spaces within the existing lot. So access will be unchanged off of Caro Avenue onto Lamb Lane. And it's a 20-acre parcel with plenty of room on it. We did put out a notice. We did not receive any public comments on this. In reviewing the criteria, it does comply with the growth policy. It's a rural zoning district, and church is in a permitted use there, permitted conditional use. The setbacks will be met for that zoning district. It will have adequate parking. As far as the site suitability, again, it's a 20-acre site. There's plenty of room for this activity on here. It's not going to impact traffic or anything else around the site. It's currently on city water and sewer, or at least city water. Not sure about sewer. They'll have, yeah, it's a private sewer system, and then there, any expansion of impervious surface over 10,000 square feet will require an engineered stormwater drainage plan. It's not anticipated to have any neighborhood impact particularly, and it's compatible with the adjacent uses. We did find it meets the criteria for a conditional use permit. We recommended 10 conditions of approval. Most of them are standard. One of them would be to add 9 bicycle parking spaces to the site. They'll need a landscaping plan submitted with their application for a building permit, and they'll have to get architectural review approval. This did go to the Planning Commission on April 16th, and the applicant did speak. There was no other people speaking on that, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval, and staff does recommend approval. Be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions? Steve?
Is it going to affect the disc golf course out there at all?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
Ben?
I noticed there's a condition in here, number 8. It says it has to go to architectural review, and I'm wondering if that needs to be struck.
Everything gets approved. It has to come, not the committee, but we review it for architectural review by staff. It says architectural review approval must be obtained, not committee approval, but we do review every project that's commercial or more than a duplex for architectural review.
So this will still be a standard condition going
Yep.
forward, even
Yep.
given the changes. Okay. I have a second question.
Please.
Good. I noticed that this particular establishment is on a septic instead of a sewer, and I'm wondering, given the expansion of use, at what point is connecting to sewer considered here?
You know, I can let Craig answer that. It has probably Flathead County's call.
Yeah, so Flathead County says if you're within 200 feet of an existing sewer main, you have to connect, and they're probably about 1,200 feet. So it'd be a significant sewer main extension to connect these guys to city sewer.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Giuseppe?
Just a quick one, Dave, and I might have missed it. We make reference to the growth policy. Are we now working on the 2045 vision?
Well, I mean, this was submitted prior to the adoption of that, so this was reviewed under the old growth policy. So
Thank you.
anything, new applications that are submitted after that was adopted on April 20th would be reviewed under the new growth policy.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Not seeing any, we did advertise for a public hearing on item 6A, WCUP 26-01. Any public comment on this request? Michelle, anyone online? I don't see Michelle, actually. Dana? Yeah.
I got it covered. Anybody who's attending online and would like to provide comment on this item, please raise your hand. I think you're good.
I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion, please. Andy?
Mr. Mayor, I would go ahead and move that we approve WCUP 26-01, our first of the year, now that I see that. Findings of fact, staff report, and the recommended conditions of approval is sent to us by our own planning commission.
Is there a second to the motion?
A second.
Seconded by Councilor Caltabiano. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously, which brings us on to our second and final public hearing of the night, which will be item 6B, which will be Resolution 26-12, rezoning 1350 and 15, and I need to put my readers on. 1350 and 1352 Wisconsin Avenue from WR3, which is our low-density multifamily residential district, to WB2, which is our general resort business district. Good evening.
Good evening. This application is requesting a zone change consistent with the existing use in order to facilitate future development and align existing use with the appropriate zoning district. This will be at 1350 and 1352 Wisconsin Avenue, adjacent to the Whitefish Lake Lodge. The properties are currently zoned as WR3, also known as our low-density multifamily residential district. The Wisconsin Avenue corridor plan specifically amended these two lots to a resort commercial, and the applicant is requesting a WRB2, which is also known as our general resort business district, as the appropriate zoning to meet that resort commercial designation. The adjacent land uses to the north is commercial, south is multifamily, east is open space, and west is Whitefish Lake. We conducted public noticing on March 25th, the 1st of April, as well as March 27th. To date, we have received 3 public comments in writing, 2 opposed and 1 in support. Also, we received 1 verbal support at the public hearing on April 16th at the Planning Commission. The proposed zoning district is consistent with the future land use map and the growth policy. That is the 2007 growth policy, since this application was submitted prior to the 2045 adoption. Review of city standards will secure safety from fire, panic, and other dangers. Public services are available to the subject properties. Reasonable provision of adequate light and air are provided through lot coverage, setbacks, conformance with the building code at the time of building permit submittal. Traffic impacts from any future proposes will be reviewed during the permitting process. Zone change will promote compatible commercial resort growth and will conform with growth policy and future land use map. The proposed zone is consistent with the vision of the Wisconsin corridor, and the zone change will conserve the value of any surrounding buildings because any future redevelopment will upgrade dilapidated buildings. The proposed zone change encourages the most appropriate use of land that is consistent with the city-county growth policy and adjacent zoning. The request is also consistent with the historical established and a trending pattern of uses. That is a summary of findings from my staff report. I did want to address a few of the public comments that we received. One was pertaining to the marina. No marina expansion would be permitted with this application. A marina expansion does require a PUD amendment, which would go to you guys even with the MLUPA changes. So you would see a request if such proposal was asked. I believe there's also public comment to the district size. District size refers to the entire zone rather than the lot size. Converting these two lots would add to the district size, which is already in conformance. So there's nothing that would make it out of conformance with adopting this resolution. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Lauren. Any questions for Lauren on her staff report? Ben?
When I was reading through the staff report and the analysis of this, it analyzes it in the context of the old growth policy, and I'm wondering if staff has analyzed this in the context of the new growth policy.
We have not, since the application was submitted prior to the adoption of the 2045 growth policy, and so we must recognize that that we have to do what was already adopted at its time. The staff report was created during and prior to the adoption, so we weren't able to take into account the new one.
And is this council to analyze this the same way?
My understanding is yes.
Yeah, okay. Angie, do you agree? Is that? Okay.
Additional questions for Lauren on her staff reports? Not seeing any. We did advertise for item 6B, which will be resolution 26-12. I will start and ask if the applicants have anything further to add. Now would be your opportunity.
Good evening. Donna Valad, Sand Surveying 2 Village Loop. I'm here tonight representing the applicants. So as Lauren stated, this is a zone change to WRB2, which is General Resort Business, and that was planned for within the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor Plan. These lots were specifically called out in that plan for this future use. An expansion of the existing PUD, which covers the properties to the north, will be requested at a later date. This request will have the specifics of what the plans are for these properties and will also undergo review by the planning office and also go through the proper hearing procedures. We agree with the staff report and we're available for any questions you may have.
Thanks, Donna. Any questions for Donna on behalf of the applicant? Ben?
What would your intentions be with this zone change?
Well, it does bring it into conformance with the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor, and the applicants are here tonight, and I believe they do want to speak as well, so they would be better able to answer that.
Thanks, Donna. Brian, do you have anything to add? Yep. Thanks, Donna.
Hi, my name is Brian Averill. Live at 1500 East Edgewood. These two pieces of property are very important to the lodge. We've owned them for a little over 10 years or so. They've provided a real vital support function for the current operation, as you guys can see. Our intention, should you guys approve this tonight, which I certainly hope you do, but would be to continue the use for the property kind of as it is today. We're working through a master plan. We really haven't had that 100% solidified yet, but we have 3 real criteria for that. And the 3 criteria, in no particular order here, but I hear a lot from the community and the residents on Monks Bay that how do we control the noise coming out of that tent for parties and late nights. The plan, whatever plan we come up with, would 100% address that. Our other one that's really important is the marina. I know the marina is a very sensitive, it's a great community benefit, and it also has a lot of sensitivity around how the marina is used and the functionality of it. I would not be in front of this board asking for an expansion of marina slips, whatever that is. And then kind of the third public benefit that I'm seeing is, as you guys probably know, the Viking Creek runs under the main driveway of the lodge. We look to move it to the south property lots and expose it, link it in some fashion to the future Whitefish Lake Institute Interpretation Center and those ponds that are been contemplating. So it'd be a really neat kind of public benefit and feature kind of how that water would flow and interact in the lake. So I had a chance to read the letter that came from the neighbor on Monks Bay, and I totally agree. I used to be a resident on Monks Bay. The noise coming out of that tent is not what we want. It's frustrating for me. This would allow us a solution to fix that in the future. And then just to reiterate, we'll not be in front of this board asking for additional marina slips in the future. So that would be our intention for the property.
Thanks, Brian. Steve?
Brian, currently you use that, at least one of those lots for your valet parking, right?
We do.
Okay, and that's not paved either, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay.
But we'd be happy to pave it.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously my concern up here is expansion of short-term rentals because the community has said over and over and over again, we don't want to expand short-term rentals anywhere. And, you know, when we do a zone change and we give latitude for expanding short-term rentals, it's easy for people to see the money that comes with creating more short-term rentals. And I, you know, what I'd like to know is how do we hold your feet to the fire on things like daylighting Viking Creek and not just building more short-term rentals there instead of actually making further improvements that are more beneficial to the community instead of just to the Whitefish Lake Lodge?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I don't know exactly how to answer that other than our intention would be those three components. The lots as they exist today, they do serve a vital function for the lodge, such as the parking, and that's not going to go away. So our need for those services, not just short-term rentals, is really going to be really important. And I understand your comments now, and whatever we do has to come back through this board to get approved for. So we would amend the PUD that we have for the lodge, and that would have to take your guys' approval for it. So all those benefits would come out in that process.
So these lots are wrapped into the PUD you have for the lodge, is that?
Today they're not, but when any additional use for that land would have to come through a PUD amendment, which would be the current lodge PUD.
Well, I mean, what prevents you from just putting up more short-term rental units there? Like another, I don't know how many you could fit in those two lots, but probably a lot. That's, you know,
Well,
I'm just trying to capture the
yeah.
sentiment of our community here.
Yeah.
And since you're in the hot seat right now, I think it's fair for you to answer those questions.
No, fair enough. It would, whatever we would do would have to come back through the board for approval. But we still need all those functions. So we can't just go onto that lot. Like I know just intuitively, you can't go on the lot and build a bunch of rentals without the parking because we need the parking where it is today. I'm not sure if I'm answering that directly, but you can't use all the space for short-term rentals and not have the functionality piece. And then just trying to be a good neighbor, one in the community, but two on the lake, there's got to be a way to solve that noise that's in the tent, which is Wedding Central on the lake. And this, I don't know what that solve is, but I know that problem exists, and I know that I can solve it with this, which isn't short-term rental driven. It's something else to solve that. And so, yeah, there might be space for that, I guess, but I can't also operate the lodge without these function pieces, which are the other aspects.
Sure, I understand those things. My other question is that, why does it have to be WRB2 to do those things? Because you'd only be able to build residential on those lots if it were to stay zone WR3? Is there no other process?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for answering my questions.
Yeah,
Appreciate
hope I
it.
answered them.
You did.
Other questions for Brian? I had a few, Brian, or maybe one or two. Years ago, for the record, well before there was an application, I met with your father on the property, Dan, and he discussed the concept of a conference center. Is that being contemplated?
I don't know exactly what form it would take, but something to house those events that would come off the lake. So it's got to take some form like that. And it doesn't need to be, conference center sounds huge. Our intention would be not to build something that's huge for an overall conference center, although there's, those pros and cons, and we haven't weighed all those pros and cons out. They bring great business to the community for conferences, which we definitely need. You need space for those events, but at the same time, I don't want to give the insinuation that we're going to build a citywide conference center, because it sounds pretty big.
Okay. My next question and last question is, you mentioned a music venue. Would that be an enclosed venue, or?
Thank you. I hope I said that right. So today, the wedding pavilion on the lake does all the weddings. Everyone wants that spot, which means late night music and noise and whatnot. Those events would go into the facility that I was just talking about.
Indoor?
Indoor.
And
Yes.
would the existing tent pavilion be decommissioned or
I
put
don't,
to rest?
It would be put to rest in the sense that we would not allow late night weddings to happen out there. Someone might be able to get married so you can say your vows on the lake and have the beautiful view. It's just we would then go from there to say music, dinner, and so on and so forth somewhere else, not on the lake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Further questions for Brian? Not seeing any. We will take public comment at this point. I do have a sign-up list. You know who you are, so feel free to approach the microphone, please, and your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Pam Shaw, and my address is 1326 Wisconsin Avenue. And I'm before you as a fourth-generation resident of the Monks Bay neighborhood, and I'm here to express my concern about the rezoning request submitted by the Whitefish Lake Lodge. While I understand the value of tourism and economic development, this rezoning proposal presents several issues that will significantly impact the livability of the adjoining neighbors of the Whitefish Lake Lodge. I'm sure you're all pretty well aware of some of the issues that we face. I know that there have been groups that have come before you before, and I know Brian is as well, because we call the lodge, the neighbors and I, and the city as well, complaining almost every week during the summer. I know this is about zoning, but the recent articles in the Whitefish Pilot and the Daily Interlake forecast future expansion. Monks Bay and the surrounding neighborhoods are already experiencing significant strain through continuous noise pollution, increased boat traffic, and nighttime shoreline disturbances, and these have become regular challenges for us, the residents. Adding the option to add more capacity to the hotel will inevitably intensify these impacts on the surrounding neighborhood and bay, which are already overburdened. I'm also concerned about the additional traffic which may result from this rezoning and future changes that it will bring. Wisconsin Avenue is already heavily used, especially during peak seasons, and further congestion will create safety issues for those of us who rely on this route daily. I respectfully ask the City Council to consider the cumulative negative impact this rezoning may have on our neighborhood, our lake, and our safety on Wisconsin Avenue. So, thank you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate your comments.
Can I leave this with someone?
Yeah, Michelle, please. Who's next? Toby, and then we'll take Mike Copel.
Toby Scott, Barclay Lane, Whitefish. I noticed this come up in the paper and on the agenda, and I think it's a good idea. It's sort of a no-brainer in that they want to make it business commercial or resort commercial, and that's what's going on there by the lodge. And so I don't think that it's much of an issue to change it over to this new zoning. And as far as what they're going to do. They're not asking for anything on the lake. It's just merely a zone change for this piece of property. And I think that the Averils have the best of intentions for the use of it. And so I encourage you to vote in favor.
Thank you, Toby. Mike?
Mr. Mayor, City Council people, good to see you. Mike Koppel, Director of the Whitefish Lake Institute. We own the property across Wisconsin Avenue immediately to the east of the subject property. And that ownership by the Whitefish Lake Institute was the culmination of 2 years of negotiations back in 2006, 2007, right, where we had luncheon meetings for a good part of 2 years between the Averill family, us, and the Friends of Wisconsin Avenue Wetlands, which was a kind of an organic grassroots neighborhood group that had formed in opposition to previous high-density development proposals in the area. The culmination of that negotiated process was an application that went to City Council that called for economic expansion with the construction of the Viking Lodge, but it also included a land donation to the Whitefish Lake Institute for 28.82 acres, and then it also included the 17-lot Viking Creek subdivision, which was located entirely on an upland designated parcel. There's other various minor conditions there with that deal, but that came to City Council and that was approved unanimously, and then was basically touted as an example of how developers could work with local groups to broker a solution to benefit all. So currently today, the Whitefish Lake Institute now has a public interpretive nature trail there, which we get, fifth graders from Whitefish and Kalispell each year, and it's really our educational flagship. And it's really a great respite for community members to visit. It's a nice flat trail, so we get a lot of seniors and young families utilizing that trail. So I think it's really become a great community amenity. And as most of you know, we also have a lot of wildlife in that area. So in the wildlife or urban interface, it was just in the paper a couple weeks ago, we put in a beaver exclusion fence on the front end of the culverts going under Wisconsin Avenue because the beavers were busy damming that up. So the Whitefish Lake Institute, as Brian alluded to, we're considering a project to increase our educational programming. I'm really not at liberty tonight to say exactly what that is. We have a board meeting May 18th to discuss that. So just in a couple of weeks, we might have an update. But we're looking to further mentor the next generation of environmental stewards. And like the development proposal back in 2007, 2008, Brian Averill and I have been talking now for a couple of years about some resource benefits that could take place as these potential projects move forward in parallel fashion. So one on the west side of Wisconsin Avenue, one on the east side of Wisconsin Avenue. So Brian mentioned that, we've been talking about daylighting Viking Creek. So currently, where the beavers try to make a home or try to dam the stream, that culvert extends 250 feet all the way to Whitefish Lake. It offers little to no resource value for the biology, right, for the ecology. So we've been talking about daylighting Viking Creek. It'd be great to work with Montana Department of Transportation to actually maybe even get open arch culverts or a bridge there, but in lieu of that, we can still break into the culvert on the lodge side of where the culvert's located and then daylight it, provide some sinuosity to the stream, and it would probably be a great aesthetic, addition to the Averill's lot. In the meantime, it would serve, potentially through fostering good aquatic life, whether it's aquatic insects or we might even get fish moving up it to spawn, who knows. So, so I'm not here tonight as a proponent or opponent of what you're voting on tonight. That's not what the Whitefish Lake Institute does. But I am here tonight to say that we have partnered in the past with the Averill family and the Lodge at Whitefish Lake to provide resource benefit and community benefit. And those discussions have been ongoing here again for the last couple of years. So I'm looking forward to what the vision for that area of Wisconsin Avenue could look like. And just to let you know that there's a couple of projects in the hopper, and I hope to report back to you soon about that. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions for Mike? You bet. Thanks, Mike. Additional public comment. Marcia, did you have anything to add? Good to see you.
Thank you. I'm still walking the planet, not sure how much longer. Anyway, Marcia Sheffels, 450 Parkway Drive, Whitefish. I'm a neighbor right to the south of the Whitefish Lake Lodge. Actually worked at the Viking to put myself through college. To a well-seasoned council and a well-seasoned mayor, I want to thank you for all of your service to Whitefish. It's much appreciated. We don't come often enough to thank you. We come to complain. So I'm here to complain. I have a concern. I have a great concern about the rezoning. The lodge is commercial, but those of us to the south, to the north, to the east and upper areas, we're all private homeowners. We pay high taxes. We are vested residents, and we have just found it difficult to work with the lodge for almost 2 decades. We have tried and have not gotten responses. Unfortunately, they have not been good neighbors. So I would just strongly like to go on record that I oppose this rezoning request. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcia. Further public comment this evening? Michelle, anyone online?
For those of you who are interested in speaking towards this agenda item, please raise your hand. Mike, if you would like to please unmute your mic and state your name and address, please.
Mayor and City Council Michael Hine, 612 Lupfer. Not speaking as a member of the Planning Commission, but for information, in response to Ben's question about whether this request was considered in light of the existing growth policy or the new community plan that's going in, we did discuss that briefly during the hearing of the Planning Commission, and the Dave Taylor clarified for us that these 2 lots are in the same place type as the lodge. That's waterfront neighborhood. So from the standpoint of the new growth policy, the place type and also the incorporation of the Wisconsin Avenue plan meant that this was largely in compliance with the new community plan. So that's all I had.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else, Michelle?
I think we're good.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council. We'll start with Steve and then Giuseppe.
Just have a couple of questions first. So, Dave, about the PUD that they have over there, the 2 lots that we're talking about tonight are not currently within the PUD.
Yeah,
right?
they did not own those when that PUD was obtained back in the day.
Okay, so for them to wrap those into the PUD, they need to come back and apply to move their PUD to include
Correct. The
those
boundary
2
would
lots.
change to encompass that. Yep.
And then the city has a little more say over what gets done, right?
Yeah, correct.
Does the zone change have to happen first before they apply to move those lots into the PUD?
Yeah, I mean, it makes it consistent. I mean, they've been using those lots for overflow parking as well as for employee housing, since they obtained those lots. And we've kind of been nudging them to get them consistent with the zoning, and which is why when they approach the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor Committee.
I don't think you're answering my question.
Well, I'm
Is there anything that prevents them from amending the PUD to include those lots before we change the zoning?
Well, a PUD is an overlay, so the underlying zoning stays the same in a PUD.
So they could apply for a PUD.
But that'd be,
and
those two
then-
lots would be R4 with the PUD overlay, which means you could potentially spread the PUD across those, but I mean, from a consistency point of view, from a zoning point of view, that's something that it should be consistent with the lodge and with the future land use map, which of course has been changed to a place type map, but the old map showed that as resort.
But if it's within a PUD, then it doesn't really matter, right? Because they can change things around and do things without with the city having some oversight over what's there. That's my concern. I'm speaking for the people of Whitefish right now. When I see two lots that would be rezoned WRB2 that could include more resort residential, they could still do that if they extended the PUD over to that area, correct or incorrect?
You can, well, the uses
They
can
would have to
expand
apply
across
for it. They'd have to apply for it and come in and ask for it.
Correct. It's
But-
just cleaner to have them be the same.
I understand the cleaner part of it. That's not the question I'm asking. So they could apply for a PUD change first and then still come back and ask for the zone
If their intention
change.
was to expand the lodge facilities on, as part of the overall hotel.
Well, they've
onto
already,
that lot.
I mean, Brian just said, this is gonna be part of the PUD. So that's part I'm trying to make sense of in my mind. And if it's part of the PUD, then it includes boat slips and things like that.
I mean,
Because currently, if we change the zoning, they could apply for a new dock, potentially. Even though they said they're not going to. I'm just trying to run through some scenarios here. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. I mean, I think, some of the, you might want to ask the applicants, but, when this thing kind of started, because they were looking at potentially changing their drive entryway and bringing some of the loop parking onto that property.
Okay, and all of
which
that can
wouldn't
be
allowed with
accomplished,
the
all of
current
that can
zoning.
be accomplished under a PUD, correct?
Well, the change in the driveway would not trigger a PUD amendment.
Okay. And then my other question is, if they do daylight the stream, would that trigger our setbacks that we require from waterways?
Well, they would have to have, right now it's culverted, so there's no setback requirement.
I
We didn't
understand. That's why I'm
anticipate that.
asking.
Well, I'm just saying, but yeah, if they
'Cause it would
daylighted
encumber
it,
their
they would
property.
need a PUD in order to ask for a variance to those setback requirements, because there's no way they could conform with where the lodge is located once that creek's daylighted, as well as the parking and everything else that would need to be associated with that. So a PUD would be necessary for that part of it.
Okay. Thank
Steve,
you.
I did want to answer your question about the dock. They would not be able to add a dock because it is a common waterfront property and only one dock is permitted per common waterfront property. And so that would have to require a PUD amendment, which you guys would have to approve. They wouldn't be able to change, add anything without coming to the council first in regards to docks or the marina.
Thanks, Lauren. Giuseppe.
Yes, I just wanted to summarize, Dave and Lauren. This application went in front of the Planning and Building Department, which recommended it to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission voted unanimously, am I correct?
You'd have to ask Lauren. I don't have her sheet, but I believe they did.
I have it here. I just wanted to be said on the record.
Sorry, could you repeat your question one
The
more time?
Planning Commission voted in favor to recommend this zoning change to us. Was it unanimous?
Yes, it was unanimous.
Thank you. Now, thank you, Lauren. I just have a question. I was reading under Title 11, and I think, if I'm correct, it's Title 11Q, the definition of the zone. And if you scroll down to 11-2Q-4, just explain to me, I don't think we have an issue here, but explain to me why the standards for WRB2 are, and amongst the standards, our code defines minimum district size as 15 acres, minimum lot area as not applicable, and how does this definition apply to what we want to do tonight, or we are asked to do tonight?
Yeah, so the district refers to the zoning district. So the zoning district as a whole, including all parcels underneath that given zoning district that are continuous, that counts towards that 15-foot acreage. The Whitefish Lake Lodge and its PUD, its current zoning meets that 15-acre minimum. So adding these lots on would only increase conformity or maintain conformity. It would not affect conformity. As far as lot sizes, since it's not applicable, no minimum lot size is applied to these lots.
Thank you. So as a counterexample, if those two lots were not adjacent to any side of that property and they were 2 blocks to the south, they wouldn't satisfy this because they by themselves wouldn't qualify as a minimum district for that zone.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Ben?
My first question I want to ask, I think is somewhat similar to what Steve was asking, but just so I'm clear. If the applicant wished to expand the facilities of the lodge in ways that they've described, could they not simply apply to amend or expand the existing PUD to encompass the expanded operations without this zone change?
Yeah, I mean, I believe they can. I mean, I don't know at what point they plan on, you know, coming forward with their plans and all that stuff. I mean, currently, you know, what the activities that are happening with there, some of them are out of compliance with the residential zoning that's there. You know, commercially parking vehicles on there isn't something that, with, you know, they don't have a paved parking lot there. There's some stuff that we'd like to see them come into conformance with, which isn't in conformance with that R2 zoning. If they did amend the PUD and bring that in there, then I think that they could, you know, accomplish that. So there's kind of like a catch-22. They, you know, they could amend their PUD. They're not ready to do that. However, they, you know, would like to make it consistent with the rest of their property, so there's not some, you know, difference there between things, because they are using it as part of their facilities.
Okay, because there have been some public benefits described here tonight that, I mean, this is a simple zone change, right? So these public benefits that have been described, we have no guarantee or anything that those would
No, not until
actually
they
happen.
come in for the PUD amendment, which they need to do if they want to, you know, expand the lodge.
Correct. Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things
But
that
I mean,
could
that,
happen without
you know,
it.
started with the minor, you know, looking at a minor rearrangement of their parking area and how that, you know, they wanted Pole Valley parking into the front of that,
Yeah.
which they would need to come onto that lot for in order to accomplish it. And so that's, you know, one of the things that they maybe have in their pipeline that maybe they could address, but that they weren't really able to do that without bringing the zoning into compliance, so.
Okay. So, oh yeah, please. John.
Real quick follow-up. Dave, what defines expanding the lodge?
Well, if they were going to make the building footprint bigger.
Not attached, like detached facilities that support the lodge operations. Is that considered expanding the lodge?
You know, I'd have to go back to the original PUD and look at, you know, exactly what the wording of that is. I mean, there's some specific language in there about, you know, the number of parking spaces that are required, you know, per room that are in there. There's some specific language in there about, you know, it's basically changing that, what that PUD was. If it's something that wasn't part of that PUD and it's happening completely separately, then you know, Angie and I'd have to talk about how that would work. But it's a very complex original project, and it's been amended. You know, and I just haven't like read through it all since it was Lauren's project since, you know, 10 years ago probably. So.
Thanks, Ben.
I had just one other question. From a high-level policy standpoint, I think this council has been crystal clear for a long time that there is to be no expansion of land that allows short-term rentals, and I believe that was culminated in our latest growth policy as being a pretty clear red line, if I recall. So I'm just wondering how to think about this. I mean, I don't have, some of what was proposed here seems probably non-objectionable, but here we are not 2 weeks later asking to vote to change zoning from medium-density residential to short-term rental zoning. How do we vote on that?
I mean, for us, it goes back to what, what standard growth policy document are we referring to? And it was specifically the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor Plan calls out these two lots and calls for the, resort business future land use, which is the only zoning that would go into that would be this resort business. And so, when we have that as a document that went through the planning commission, the council voted on it and adopted it, that's our standard to review things. Now we have a new growth policy, but that was not in effect when this was submitted. So we're based on that, and the new growth policy, is ambivalent about it because the future land use is the same as the lodge is on these lots. So, how we were able to recommend approval is because it's something that was anticipated in the past with the adoption of the Wisconsin Corridor Plan, which was only back in 2018, wasn't that long ago. So.
Okay, thanks.
Additional questions for Lauren or Dave? Additional public comments? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council, preferably one way or another. I'd prefer to start with a motion, please. Unless there's outstanding questions for staff, or the applicants for that matter. Steve?
I guess I'd like to hear from the applicants in response to both Ben and my question about, if you want to come up, Brian, that would be great. Or if you don't want to answer, that's also fine. My question, though, is why not just apply for a PUD change instead of have to change it to WRB2, knowing our concerns?
Yep. No, I can understand, and thanks for letting me talk again. I said earlier that we've owned the land for over 10 years. And although it would be great, there's clearly public benefit. We heard from the neighbors here about how that noise is. We will solve that, but we can never solve that without incorporating that land into the lodge. So I think that's generally that's generally my answer. I don't think we're not going to come and say we need to expand a bunch of short-term rentals on there.
Well, you wouldn't have to, because you'd be able to do it by right.
Well, but we don't, no, well, we can't do that by right. We would need to come in front of this council and ask for permission for whatever we would think. So you guys will have a chance to vote that up or down based on what we propose. I think that's the first and foremost, most important thing, is that you will make a decision of whatever we propose at that time. And I don't have a clear timeline for when that would be. I'd like to tell you it would be soon, but I honestly don't have a timeline for that. It's not, we're not there in any fashion at all. And again, we've had the land for 10 years and it's been in the use that it's been in for about that time frame. So it's something for the future, and when that day comes, it will come in front of you guys. But I do believe that, and we would like it to be in conformance today, and so we can continue doing what we're doing in conformance instead of out of conformance, because that land is critically important to the lodge today. So, and if I'm not really being clear about why that's critically important, today it's being parked on. Right or wrong, it's being parked on today. But the benefit of being parking on that land is that cars aren't strung up and down Wisconsin. And the other benefit is that cars aren't crossing Wisconsin into the lot across the street. And that's a lot of cars every day, all day long. And so there's just benefits there for doing what it is. And I think that's why it's just been okay to park on that and that land as it is, which is why we're not highly motivated to do anything with it. But someday, when we get ready and we figure out something that really benefits everyone, we'll be back in front and we'll ask permission for whatever we're doing.
Okay, Thanks, Brian. Can I ask staff a question now?
Please.
Dave, if this gets rezoned to WRB2, what oversight does the council have over what could be built there?
Well, I mean, it's, you know, there's permitted uses in the RB2, but the lodge, like the accessory uses all have to be part of a lodge facility in that zoning district.
Why? Why do they have to be part of the lodge facility if we
the way the
rezone them to
RB2
WRB2? I
the way
don't
that-
understand.
That was my question earlier.
If it's not, I mean, these are separate lots from the lodge.
Correct.
If they're not part of the PUD yet.
No, but there's many uses that are listed that have to be accessory to a lodge facility to be permitted, that are listed in that RB2. There's a few standalone uses, but the.
What are the standalone uses?
Hang on one second. So all the, you know, commercially associated use of the hotel and all that stuff have to be part of that lodge facility. Hang on. Computer's being weird.
Okay. Brian, if you can answer that question, you can come on up.
I don't know if it's a direct answer, but the reason we would come back for a PUD amendment is that the property has to function as a whole. It can't, you can't have this standalone convention center, for example, and not have the ability to serve alcohol in the thing. And so, and you can't go afford to buy another liquor license, is maybe
Sure.
my way of
I-
describing
yeah.
it. So I'm like, the only functionality is to go to the lodge PUD and expand it, which is why we would do what we would do.
Yeah, and that's still my question, is why I don't understand why we wouldn't just expand the PUD to cover that area instead of have to rezone it to be RB2. That's,
And I think it's the timing, is that we might be a while, I guess. We don't have a time frame to do it, but, or we
Okay.
don't have a plan. I guess better yet, I don't have a solidified plan to present for it either.
I understand that part.
So Steve, do you want me to get back to your question?
I would actually like you to respond to
Okay.
Steve's question, please.
Yeah, just so in that RB2, you know, it allows established resort complexes that meet certain conditions, and then any retail uses that would be allowed would have to be part of that overall complex. And there's a list of things like, you know, flower shops and health studios, things like that. And then the other standalone uses are boarding houses, so employee housing, daycare, hotel, motel, obviously, I mean, that's already established on that other one. And then residential, single-family through multifamily dwellings. And then the conditional uses are boat launches and ramps, private clubs, commercial recreation facilities, convention centers and facilities, marinas, professional offices, RV parks, and then ski areas and facilities, but that wouldn't really apply.
Water skiing.
So just one final question, if you'll allow me. Sorry, I know I'm taking up a lot of time because I'm trying to make sense of this. So if they wanted to expand their PUD, they couldn't just say, hey, we want to expand the PUD to cover these two lots. They'd have to have a plan in place of what they're going to do in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure whatever they have intentions there is going to be part of that overall resort facility and not some standalone thing on there.
Okay, and I just want to clarify something else you said, because it didn't strike me as, it struck me wrong, and I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I think you said that we want to change the zone to bring them into compliance with the zoning, with what they're doing now with the underlying zoning.
So, I mean, they're using that facility for employee housing, which is allowed use in that WR4 zoning district.
Okay.
But yeah, but commercial parking of vehicles, it's kind of a gray area there. I mean, we haven't gotten any complaints about it, but it's also, technically if you're parking cars, that you have to have a parking lot and landscaping, all the things that we require in our code.
What about the
in order to do
wedding center or the tent or whatever it's
that.
called?
Yeah, they would, the tent facility is in front of the lodge, it's not on this site.
It's not on these sites. Okay, I didn't think it was, but that seems to garner the most complaints. Okay, thank you.
Giuseppe?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Let me find the best wording here. I move to approve WZC 26-03, is it? And adopt the findings of fact in the staff report as recommended by the Whitefish Planning Commission on April 16, 2026.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Fury. Giuseppe, would you like to address your motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'm moving this way based on the finding of facts, the discussions we've had tonight, the Planning Commission's unanimous recommendation. The fact that we're looking at changing 1350 and 1352 Wisconsin Avenue from WR3 to WRB2, it's just the zoning change for those two properties. Our scope tonight is not allowing for additional boat slips, dock expansions, and future master plan. That will need to come if it ever needs to come at a later stage. And as the discussion between Dave and Steve clarified, and it's written in our code, a PUD requires a certain level of investment and detail in the plans. We've seen PUDs coming to us, and we see what they look like. For this reason and the compliance to the growth policy, I support this motion.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Further comments on the motion? Andy?
Yeah, I guess I'll make a couple of comments here. After just having spent the last 18 months going through a new growth policy and fretting over place types, land use designations, and a map, and here we have a piece of property, two pieces of property, both called out to BWRB2 in both the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor project, and then also in the previous growth policy future land use map. And as Mike Heim said on the planning board, who just spoke, it also is in compliance with what we are looking at the 2045 plan. I think that's a pretty hard thing to say no to for me. I don't see why we would have spent all the time in the last 18 months really coming up with all these land use designations if we're just going to ignore them when they come up. And granted, this is a new application, but it still is applied for underneath the old rules. I'm going to take them at their word that they're trying to address some of the problems there, which I think is what the neighborhoods is mostly worried about, and noise is the biggest concern there. And I live just around the corner on the lake, and I can tell you I can hear weddings at 10 o'clock at night around the corner at my house. And an expansion of enclosing that and eliminating the noise, I think, would be a huge benefit, and we don't know that that's specifically going to happen, but I think that's part of the direction that they're looking at. So I'm going to take them at their word that that's what it is. Daylighting the creek, if that ultimately happens, would be a huge thing. It'd be a very big benefit for Viking Creek, rather than spending its life in a dark culvert all the time. I think that's kind of a bad thing. And so I just would really have a hard time saying no in this case. And yes, something will come back to us. And then I think the final thing I would think is, yeah, maybe it would be short-term rentals if they did expand rooms from the lodge over to there to, be with whatever else they get built over there, or it could then be employee housing. And I think that's it. But I think it's going to be something else other than high-end property, it's not going to be affordable housing built there because it's lakefront and it's right next to the lodge, and ultimately something's going to get built there, and at WR3, it's going to have some density. And that's going to generate traffic. And, even if they do move weddings to the inside of a building, they're not going to be able to do any more. They already do 2 a day all summer long for the most part. So it's not like they're going to make more weddings there. I don't see that that's going to necessarily be an expanded use. It's a use that's already happening. So I will support the motion.
Thank you, Andy. Further discussion? Ben?
This is a really tough one, not gonna lie to you. Like I said before, I feel like this council for quite a while has been very crystal clear about the fact that we manage our short-term rental population by zoning district. And in fact, when we went through this growth policy process, we very specifically wrote very specific language that says there will be no more short-term rental land available, period. And here we are 2 weeks later, and we are having an application for a straight zone change from medium-density residential, which is actual housing, to resort business, which is not. So there would be nothing preventing the applicant from scraping all the employee housing, selling the property tomorrow, and building the world's largest short-term rental project. There would be absolutely nothing to stop that with zero community benefit. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not hostile to what's being proposed. But what's being proposed is not what's in front of me. What's in front of me is a straight zone change. And I just question the way that this is going, the process that this is following, and I personally do not feel, without further information provided, that this is within what I see as the long-term growth vision of our community, which is no expansion of land for short-term rentals, period. We have talked about that ad nauseum for multiple years now in the process of drafting this growth policy. So, Mr. Averill, I think the right thing to do, in my opinion, would be to come back with a PUD amendment. As I stated, I personally would not be hostile to the ideas, but I'd like to see the ideas. I don't think, I have no reason to think you're not a trustworthy person, but when it comes to development, it is very hard to take people at their word, so to speak. And so, I apologize, but I will not be supporting this motion. Thanks.
Steve.
I too am not hostile to the ideas. I hope you understand that. My question is about the process here. We've already had our zoning director admit that the zone change would bring you into compliance with what you're already doing there, which seems to me not the right way to do things. And it's been gotten away with somehow and hasn't been an issue. And it may provide a community benefit by not having cars parked along Wisconsin, but I don't know if you'd be able to valet park along Wisconsin either anyway. And that causes me some heartburn as somebody who is in charge of, not only creating policy, but overseeing the functions of our city government. And for us to admit to making a zone change to bring a property owner into compliance with what is already being done does not seem like a very good process to me. The other thing is that it seems like we're also hearing two different things. One is that the applicant wants to have wants to change the zone so that the things that they're doing there, they can do inside, that they can bring some of those things inside, which could be done with a PUD, and the process goes through and we get to see what it looks like. And then you're saying, and you want to do those things, but you say we're nowhere near the point of applying for a PUD and bringing those things into a real plan so that we can actually see those and comment on those and make sure that those things support what you're saying and provide the benefits that we're expecting from you. I have no reason to think that you won't be looking at daylighting Viking Creek or continuing the affordable employee housing on that property. The problem is that there's no guarantee that we get to see those things until we see a PUD that comes through. And I understand that the growth policy was changed, that the Wisconsin corridor plan was changed to include those two parcels as WRB2. And I understand the thought process behind that. I just don't see, I don't, like Ben said, we have been, and I personally have been against any expansion of short-term rentals because of what they actually do to our community. Granted, these are next to a place that is full of short-term rentals, and it's not a large impact, but to me, the greater issue is the way that the process is playing out here. I think that not only this council, but I think that the people of our community deserve to see the plan that you're going to do with these two pieces of property that you bought 10 years ago, before we approve whatever you want, whatever changes, zone changes that you want to have there. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Further comments from the council? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and I will vote against the motion, and so that motion does fail on a, 3-2 vote with councilors Cornell, Davis, and myself voting in opposition. I would now entertain an alternative motion, please.
Well, there's only one other
There's
choice.
only one other option.
I would move to deny Resolution 26, a resolution rezoning 1350 and 1352 Wisconsin Avenue from WR3 to WRB2.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Cornell. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Discussion, Giuseppe?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Talk about this.
Thank you.
I have nothing else to say.
I just had a procedural question. When the Planning Commission recommends and the Building Department writes the finding of facts, when we deny, do we not need to state alternative finding of facts?
I would recommend you do so.
Thank you. Then I stay and wait.
Should that be a part of the motion?
Please.
Give me a second.
My computer just died.
Okay, I would modify my motion to state that the proposal is incompatible. I would adjust finding one. Finding one states the proposed zone change to WRB2 is in accordance with the growth policy because the proposed zoning district is consistent with the future land use map of the growth policy. I would modify that to say the opposite, that it is not consistent with the future land use map of the growth policy.
Anything additional, Ben, in terms of
I'm
findings?
still going through these, sorry. This is a lot to go through, but I think I'll rest on that.
Okay. Is that okay with the second? Steve?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a quick point to that.
Andy?
It is consistent. So to deny that it's not consistent, I think, is patently false.
Is your issue the map or the text of the, meaning that?
If we're modifying the findings of fact to state that it's not consistent with the growth policy future land use map, it is in fact consistent with the growth policy future land worth map. So if you say that it's not, then that's a false statement. So I don't know how that can work. And honestly, I don't even think, Angie, do we even need a motion to deny? It just didn't pass.
You're right, it just didn't pass. Yeah.
I think that if, it would be fine with the first and the second, you could just withdraw your motion, and then it just doesn't get approved, and we're business as usual.
Ben, would you like to withdraw your motion?
Yes.
Is that okay with the second?
Yes, that's fine.
Motion is withdrawn. Thanks, everyone, for attending. We're going to take a 5-minute break here, and we'll reconvene in about 7 minutes. Thanks. Going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order. We are on item 7, communications from Dana Smith. Excuse me.
Nope.
No longer. We'll move on to item 7A. You do have Dana's report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Dana on her manager's report? Dana, anything additional to report on?
The only thing I have is that you have our fiscal year 2027 proposed budget. Your 2 workshops for the budget are scheduled for May 26th, 5:30 p.m. and June 8th at 5:30 p.m. outside of our normal Monday meetings.
Great. Thank you very much, Dana. Is everyone able to meet those deadlines or attend those meetings? May 26th and June 8th.
I have a commitment at 6 p.m. on May 26th.
And those will begin at 5:30, Dana?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, regardless, we can move on. You have 2 letters enclosed in the packet under communications. Any comments on the letters? Not seeing any. We'll start with councilor comments. Giuseppe, would you like to start tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. No comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Steve?
I just have a couple questions. Sorry not to prolong this anymore. But political signs, are those allowed to be put onto fencing that surrounds construction areas? Because the stuff that's right next to the
political signs are allowed on sites. I don't think we differentiate whether it can be on the fencing if it's on private property.
But
as long as it's not
didn't
the
we
right
say
of-
you can't have certain kinds of things on your fencing, like advertising and stuff like that? Because my question is, because on the fencing that's currently right next to the quarry where they're building over there, there's like 4 or 5 political signs tied to that construction fence. My recollection is that you're not allowed to advertise, you're not allowed to put up advertising as part of your fencing if it has a cloth thing, so I just assumed political advertising would be similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, they are allowed to put up the business name and other things on the fencing. I mean, I don't think we don't have something that says you can't put a sign on a fence, so.
Okay, well.
And then political signs are permitted but they're based on a certain size, and they can be bigger on commercial properties versus residential properties.
Okay, well, it's tacky as hell either way. The quiet zone on Birch Point, where are we on that, since we're talking about these things? And I bring it up not only because of our discussion, but somebody asked me about it just yesterday.
Yeah, the goal is to construct the quiet zone at Birch Point this summer.
Okay. Is that this summer or next this summer?
That's the summer of 2026.
Okay. Thanks, Craig.
This summer.
Okay.
Anything else, Steve?
Yeah, I just have one more question about the bike path behind Idaho Timber. When is that supposed to be paved? Because it's eroding in several places now. I don't know if you've been over there, but there's one part where the erosion has kind of overtaken the black barrier that prevents the sediment from washing down into the river.
Yeah, so we have a 2-year bond on the Whitefish Yards property that I think expires next year. So not this summer, but next summer.
Okay.
But I mean, that property has been an interesting kind of debacle of ownership. And so I can't tell you exactly who owns it right now, and I don't know exactly what the plan is for it, but we do have a bond in place to pave that trail. But we have to call the bond to do it, so.
Okay. All right. And
there's no real good answer to that one.
Could be next summer at the earliest.
Correct, yes.
Okay. When are we going to pave our portion of that, which extends from the current path to the border of their property?
The intent is to do them both together.
Okay, so that we save some.
Yep.
Okay. And it seems like maybe we need to consider putting some sort of barrier to prevent cars from going through that property to access Birch Point.
Yeah, I need to go back and look at that. I don't.
It's
don't
getting worn.
remember
I mean,
what
it's
you
worn
sent
like it's
me,
being
but-
used more often now.
Yeah. Was there like a picture you sent me of a car going through there or
Yes.
something? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go back and find that and make sure we can prevent that from happening.
Maybe I send it to Bridger instead. I'll find it and I'll send it to you too. I might have only
Okay.
sent it to Bridger. I forget
Okay.
because that was the first thing that struck me. Was
It's definitely something I'm hoping at some point during counselor comments that we talk a little bit about the railroad crossing elimination. But we're not at a point where we're ready to have vehicles go under that trestle for sure.
absolutely, yeah. It's not, yeah, for sure. Okay, thanks, Craig. And I have no further comments.
Thanks, Steve. Ben?
Well, I was going to comment on the work session. I think the most interesting part of that work session was the end, which was rushed. And I mean, everything I saw generally seemed to make sense. And I'm not until I got to the end. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense, but what I saw was a very large thing towering over the dog park, U-shaped overpass thing that just seemed like I had a lot of questions about it. So I guess just to ask, like, what are the next steps with that design, and are we locking ourselves into something like that at this point, or what? Anyway, what's the future of this going to be?
I would say far from it. I think what we tried to put together was a concept that stayed within the right-of-way. It'd be great to acquire some additional right-of-way to make that a little straighter and, make the overpass a little less abrupt. But ultimately, the goal is, if we want a crossing to be separated at East 2nd Street, now is our opportunity to talk to Federal Rail and BNSF, because I think some of those funds are going to dissolve here quickly. So we were really just kind of looking, and without having this plan completed yet, it's a little tricky to talk about, but we're kind of just looking for the council's, I don't know whether what your attention is to this. I mean, it's in the new growth policy to have a grade separated crossing at East 2nd Street, and now is probably the best time to start going for those funds. But we didn't want to go too fast, so we're kind of looking for your comments on that.
I mean, it seems to me, just looking way into the future, right, which we have to do with something like this. I mean, right now we have one viaduct, and that existing crossing at 2nd Street, that thing is terrible. I mean, I used to live east of town, and I would sit at that crossing forever waiting for the train to go by. It's infuriating. And so, I mean, depending on what time horizon you use, eventually you need another crossing over the railroad tracks somewhere. And so, I mean, I would point out that, we, I think, approved an apartment building right there on that thing that probably, I think, just got withdrawn. But, the longer we wait to plan this, the more impossible it gets to change the right-of-way situation or whatever. And so, seems to make sense that we would plan another crossing, but maybe we should consider other concepts as well. Just a thought.
Yes, so it's a very conceptual drawing that we put together, and we've had comments from the task force, and we're going to have a public meeting here in a couple weeks, and so we'll get additional comments. But the reality is, if we want to go for these CRISI funds, we have to have an application in by, was it June 8th? So it's more or less do we want to at least apply for it? And if we get the funds, that's great. If we don't get the funds, then we don't. But we don't necessarily have to build it if we get the grant, do we? I'm looking at Spencer because he's still here. We
mean,
won't
we've
get
made it this
arrested
far,
if we
right?
don't spend the federal money.
We've made it this far, right? So, I mean, isn't the answer that we need to apply for these funds? I mean,
I think we need to consider what the match will be for both funds. What do we call it, Chrissy? Or CRSI, however that is. I think that's only an 80% share. I'm just looking up. So we have a 20% match on anything that we have to come up with there. And the RCE is also 20%. And usually when you have federal funds on one project, the total probably has to be 80%. It can't be, has to be federal funds, and then there's a 20%, or can you use the RCE for a match? You have to have 20%. Yeah, so we would have to have locally 20% that's non-federal funds as a match to the grants received. And the C1, you have, it's like or the RCE is a minimum of a $1 million grant, and then the other one doesn't appear to have it might have a minimum. One of them has $1 million. So like your minimum you're looking at for a 20% match is $200,000. So if we want to move forward, we're going to have to talk about where we come up with $200,000 because it's not in the budget. I can tell you that.
how is this $200,000?
That's the match for the grant funds, and it's a minimum of $1 million grant.
Oh, yeah.
Request.
But you're talking
for
about
planning.
a bridge, and that thing's going to be.
Right, but yeah, so
cost
you
as
have
much as a
planning
space
and
shuttle.
develop. That's the I'm just saying your minimum match is $200,000. So whatever the cost of the project, if you're trying to go for planning and development in the grant, you can do just planning, or you can do planning and development. So the development's going to cost obviously a lot more than just doing the planning for it. I don't know which type we would apply for, but I will just say your minimum match is $200,000. That's how I'd look at it.
And we can expect BNSF to probably split the match, right? Or something close to that.
So
Yeah,
my
maybe-
opinion, for what it's worth, given the study and the crossings that were evaluated, like from my perspective, when I think about ranking these projects in order of priority, for me it comes down to emergency response, safety, which includes multimodal transportation modes as well as circulation. And I think the low-hanging fruits at this point, in which we've focused on for 20 years now, should be Birch Point. I think there's safety issues at State Park, you know, in terms of having or not having a separated bike and ped path at that crossing, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously the biggest lift is going to be East 2nd Street. So I would prefer that we focus and let's get Birch Point done and look at improvements for State Park, from my perspective, to address, you know, what's of most importance to me, and that what we've heard from residents who live on Birch Point as well as the State Park area. Any other comments on the study?
I
Andy?
get just a couple quick ones, just knowing the pushback a 4-airplane hangar got out in that location. And if I look at the size of what that viaduct would be and where that thing starts to go up the hill and where it gets across, that's gonna be a hard sell to anybody 5 years from now, 10 years from now, anytime. And so I think I really have to agree with Ben in that it's like if we gotta look at some other kind of solution in terms of what that thing ultimately looks like. Because it's going to be exactly like the one that crosses west of the fiberboard mill in Columbia Falls, and that thing starts a half a mile gaining grade, which is almost what that thing does. I mean, it's a quarter mile almost, probably, you know, and it's going to, you think an airplane hangar was going to cut down views from the dog park? Well, guess what? That thing's really going to cut down some views from the dog park. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, we need it, but I don't know, how, how do we sell it? I guess that's gonna be, and then ultimately, how do we fund it too? I mean, you're talking a $20 million project, probably? Probably more than that, maybe. Wouldn't you think, Craig?
Yeah, I think with contingency, we were about 30 million.
So, but I think we do need to start planning and designing, and I mean, yeah, if we're looking forward, we gotta start now, but, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I just don't want it to be another one of those, people talk about the downtown bypass conversation as another analogy where 20 years ago, we could have had the right of way to build a downtown bypass, and now we can't because it's all built. And I mean, I don't know that I love what I saw, but I also think at some level we have to plan for the future of how growth happens in the distant term. And so I don't know if this is the right opportunity or not. I'm struggling with this, but we need to study the concept of another crossing somewhere, either there or somewhere in the future, in the event that our town is twice the size as it is now. Something's going to be needed eventually.
The scale of this is so much bigger than what this city can handle. I mean, this is a national railway that runs through our town that is a major siding. The reason why 2nd Street is a problem is that it gets jammed up, and same with Birch Point, because they're shifting the trains all around there. And they move them forward and they move them back. So this is not just our problem, and we have to start thinking about it more broadly. If this was an interstate highway running through our town, we would not be thinking about it as, oh, what is Whitefish going to do to address this? But this is the same thing as an interstate highway. And in fact, it's more valuable than an interstate highway, or at least as valuable, because of the sheer volume of goods that come through our town every single day. And I think there's more that needs to be said than just tiny little Whitefish, Montana, focusing on something that is absolutely safety related in terms of getting people across across the railroad in a timely fashion, not only for emergencies, like your run-of-the-mill emergencies, but for emergencies of wildfire and those things. I mean, this is not just our problem. This has got to, and the funding cannot just be our problem. I mean, we're looking at like $100 million maybe for this bridge. Is that kind of, is that the right?
30.
Yeah.
30 or 40 million?
So, I mean, that's the reason we're talking about it now, is we're talking about a $30 million project, and the Chrissy funds are going to dry up. The RCE funds are going to dry up. And if we can get 80% of this paid for by the feds and split the 20% with BNSF, so our share is more like $3 million, this could be our opportunity. But I
get it.
I realize that we're very
It's a county problem, it's a state problem, it's a national problem. I mean, and it's not just our problem on the national level or even the state level. But I understand the urgency, and I'm for doing whatever we can to secure those federal dollars and do the other part of the advocacy part, because this is, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to put even a $4 million burden or $8 million burden on a city of our size to greatly improve the safety of our town. So anyway.
Craig, what do you recommend?
I guess I recommend that we go through the public meetings that we're going to have later this month and get some more comments.
Okay.
The problem is the application for Chrissy is due on June 8th, and so we're going to have very little time. I'm just looking for some direction from council on whether, do we really think that the overpass at East 2nd Street is something we want to pursue or not? And I know it's, you guys obviously just had the presentation here a couple hours ago, so the The drawings that were presented were very conceptual, and so there's lots of time to refine that and work on it. But I think that our opportunity for federal funding is going to dry up here pretty quickly. I don't know if that's a recommendation or
It
not,
would-
and Dana's going to tell me. I
Is
don't have the money to do
HDR,
it.
is their current scope of work to prepare grant applications, or would that be a contract amendment?
That would be a contract amendment, I imagine.
Okay.
Oh.
Thank you. Giuseppe.
Yes, and just following up on this, a couple of comments here. Number one, I support what Steve's concern, because those two crossings, Birch Point and Second East, used to be crossings where the bars came down or the lights came on, the trains crossed, and then the cars and the pedestrian went through. What's happening historically, as you said, is that now those are, I would call it, yard enlargement. So those two areas for BNSF have become more and more used as a yard, as a transportation route. In fact, you said shifting, they build trains, and because of the length of the train, they're building trains all the way past those two crossings, who have become now fences to a yard that is used as a yard until the train is built and is ready to go. So that's not going to go away. And by the way, you made the analogy to a highway. That's federal. So it's actually, the analogy is to a freeway, because those tracks are federal tracks. Now, given that the issue on the train side is not going to go away unless we have super huge pipelines or whatever, I think it's very important to consider ways to be independent from those bars on the tracks. We talked about the number of tracks that a crossing, not a grade, and not a grade crossing, would have to cross anywhere but in Second East. Second Street East has only 2 parallel tracks, if I remember well. Yep. I know, and I heard you all saying the concerns about drainage, but if we're talking about $40 million bridge, I do not know if it's worth to go back and look at an underpass as high as the highest track you can imagine, a fire track, that only has to cross 2 railroad tracks and won't impact on the dog park and the views, and will still satisfy the criteria, so we can proceed with a feasible grant application and then keep pushing the can down the street. So that's my comment.
Further comments on this? Craig?
Yeah, I guess, Spencer, do you want to talk just real quick about the underpass option?
Spencer, do you mind approaching the
I think
podium?
maybe if you
Yep.
get
Thanks.
the mic. We've talked to BNSF about the underpass on a number of occasions, thinking that it was the more logical solution, but they don't like underpasses.
Yeah, so there's a couple challenges when it comes to the underpass option there. Number one is at the outset during construction. When you go under railroad passes, you then have to build 2 new railroad bridges, right? Those are big, heavy, serious structures. During construction, we would need to create a temporary structure so that BNSF can continue their operations uninterrupted while building these bridges, and then kind of rectify that as you go. So at the outset, it's a little bit more expensive to construct rather than an overpass. Long term, and this was kind of one of the really key features that made it a little bit, in our eyes at the outset, less economic feasible, is if you go under, because of the drainage issues that are there, we'll have to install a pump station. And that's ongoing maintenance for basically in perpetuity, right? In the wintertime, it does snow, maybe not this winter, but presumably in the future it's going to snow again. And that's a lot of moisture issues that you then have in a freezing environment, which causes, as we all know, water is not really friendly when it freezes, right? And so there's these additional maintenance and operations costs down the road that we really thought those may balloon much further beyond what an overpass option would institute. I think it's important to note that while our recommended preferred alternative is that overpass, if you pursue grant funding, you're still going to have to go through NEPA, right? And there's still going to be, hey, let's make sure we check all of our boxes. And so there is still an opportunity that, hey, maybe as we do some final designs, a little, sharpen our pencils a little bit more, that the overpass option is not the best opportunity here. And that's when you talk to the FRA and say, hey, we got, you do have to write the application to a project, but we went through NEPA, we're walking away with this and thinking maybe this isn't the best option. Can we adjust what this project looks like? At the end of the day, it's still going to be the elimination of a at-grade crossing, and so FRA still gets their goals met. We can go through the NEPA process and really definitively say, yes, option A versus option B is better or worse based on those more detailed and stringent screening processes. But what we've done to date is just kind of the planning step, right? That's the key that is going to unlock those further project development cycle funding pots. They're not pots anymore, but previously FRA would say, look, you've got planning, you've got final design, and you've got construction. Now they want to lump some of those together, particularly final design and construction. And so we've kind of done the first step. We've planned this. We've looked at it. We said, hey, this is actually feasible, this overpass option, same as the underpass. Let's take a look at this, do some final designs, go through NEPA, and then build it. And so we're at kind of a unique opportunity right now where we can take a really big bite at this apple in ways that you haven't maybe previously. So that was a little bit beyond, I think, what the original question was. But
I say we go for it. I mean, if it's not now, when? I mean, the money's there. It's going to be competitive, but we've positioned the city well to hopefully be competitive. And if it's not now, it's never going to be. So
We don't want to look back 20 years from now thinking, what are we going to do about East 2nd Street?
Yep. So my recommendation would be to proceed with East 2nd.
Do we have to have a resolution that shows where the matching funds are coming from for the application?
yeah, so in the application, you'll need if you're providing matching funds, you'll need a letter of funding commitment. And usually most municipalities that I work with, and this is generally the case across the country, you'll have a resolution saying, hey, City Council, since you're the governing body, City Council, we have approved matching funds. We are going to pay the money when, down the road when it's obligated. We support this project, and just have a kind of formal declaration. And so that normally happens in a setting like this, and it just provides a level of documentation that they're going to need.
Do you have to state, for example, it's coming from our street fund, or we're going to float an SID, or do you have to be that specific with the commitment?
It certainly helps, but usually because sometimes, these projects are down the ways, right? Let's think about the planning study that we got. It took a year and a half to get through the grant agreement process. So there's a recognition that, where the funds may come from may shift slightly based on the reality of whatever communities are going through. So as long as you've got that letter of funding commitment saying, hey, we're good for it, we've got this documented, we've all voted on this, we all support this, you'll be okay. You don't need to say, hey, this is coming directly from.
Okay.
It certainly helps competitive-wise, building that picture, but it's not necessarily going to be a deal breaker.
Yep. Okay.
You will be looking at going out for a bond for this,
Yeah.
just so you're aware. If we do the full planning through development, asking for 20 million or $22 million, I guess, whatever the math is, 80% of 30 million. So we would have to bond for it.
20% of 30 million, but still, I think what we need is a commitment from BNSF on what they are going to fund. And I mean, these aren't fiscal 27 funds. We're talking about a year or two down the line, so at least. I mean, just to get through the grant process is probably going to be a year, so.
So will NEPA.
So if maybe like the second meeting in May, we can look at a resolution to
What if you did it the first meeting of June after the public hearing is, I know it's due on
Oh,
the
that's
8th, but
even
you
better,
could do the
yeah.
preparation at least for the grant. I know that's work that could go unneeded at some point, but then you've had your public meeting. Then the council can have a public hearing. I don't know if it's public hearing. Some grants require public hearings. I don't know.
You would just need to have.
Just at a public meeting?
think
just a
Okay.
resolution.
So at a public meeting, have a resolution, because you are committing taxpayers to that dollar amount in the future. I mean, I think whatever it is, whether it's BNSF portion, they pay half or whatnot, we are committing them to that in the future. So I think it's important, and it might be a good thing to have as a public hearing.
Steve?
I'm just going to make one more comment, and then I'll shut up. But I still don't understand why this is just our problem, because it's not just our problem. It's not just our people driving these roads. The end of Second Street hits county property. It's not just our problem.
Yeah, I think that's the intent of this process, is that we're taking 20% of the problem and splitting it with BNSF. So we're making it 10% our problem, hopefully. I mean, if we can come up with that agreement with BN.
Any further comments on this topic? Thanks, Greg.
Okay.
Thanks, Dana. Ben, anything further?
No, thank you.
Andy?
No comment.
And I do not have comments either. And on that note, thanks, everyone. We are adjourned. See you in a couple weeks.